Every day in Iowa City, I see people in passing, and I think to myself,
I wonder who that person is.
Did he grow up here?
Or did he come for college?
And end up staying because he got a grant for his research? Or maybe the love of his life.
As a townie, they
decided to raise their kids here.
In Iowa City, today I see people
every day.
And wonder,
what's her story?
And wonder
Or what she does for a living.
I see her around.
Walking her dog.
Maybe she's the writer of
Of that book I loved so much.
maybe she's a dancer.
A chef.
Iowa City
He's interesting like that.
The guy sitting next to you on the bus.
could be your new favorite singer. That lady who
Held
helped
the door open for you.
Could be a filmmaker.
A politician.
I see people.
I see people every day and wonder,
And wonder.
What's your story?
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 it's your story. Today on I See People, we meet local artist Patti Zwick, more commonly known as Patti Z, the creator of thousands of quilts. For Patti Z, quilt making is about more than design and color. Quilting provides mirrors and parallels in her life and serves as a reminder of the interconnectedness of everything we do. As with life, she is piecing together the whole from the parts, searching for what fits, looking for what resonates and vibrates, while discarding the pieces that no longer work. Meet Patti Z. This is her story. Well, Patti, thanks for letting us into your home and studio. I really wanted to interview you for this program because I feel like your artwork is kind of become representative of Iowa City. Everywhere you go in Iowa City, you see your pieces. I mean, in people's homes and businesses, in the library, all over town. It's Patti Z.
Covering the town with fabric.
You're quilting the very face of Iowa
Right.
City. So how long have you been quilting?
I made my first quilt in 1984, so 25 years.
Wow. And how did you get into it? Were you always a fiber artist? Or?
No, I think when I was a child I always wanted to be an artist, and I dabbled in everything, and it wasn't until I discovered quilt making that I found the medium that suited me. And it seems to me that quilts just resonate with people. When you tell people about a quilt and show them a quilt, they've always got a story. They always want to usually tell you about their grandma.
Yeah.
But my quilts are kind of a mix of modern and old-fashioned together. But the first time I saw an Amish quilt, it was like my heart stopped. It was so beautiful, and the colors, and it just started. And I saw a wall hanging, and I thought I could do that. I knew how to sew. I learned how to sew when I was 10, so I just kind of morphed into one after the other, and they just keep popping out.
Now, I know someone compared your work to Amish.
Amish with a twist, or Amish with a kick.
Amish with a twist, yeah. And, I think most people, when they hear quilting, they think, oh, well, it's going to be a quilt that you lay out on the bed or on the back of the couch, or maybe sometimes a bed-size quilt that you're going to put up on the wall. But you do pieces of all different sizes and shapes, and I think that makes it a little more accessible for people.
Yeah.
They can fit a little guy.
Exactly.
In there.
I mean, I've made quilts 2 inches by 3 inches, and then my first quilt was 4,000 pieces and was 91 by 91 inches. So
Your first quilt was 4,000 pieces. Wow.
by hand. And I didn't know about how to use a rotary cutter, which essentially is like a pizza wheel, and you take a mat and you can cut through 8 layers of fabric at one time. Well, I didn't know about that. I had a little cardboard template and a magic marker and a blunt scissors, and I traced around each square and cut each one out one at a time.
You did 4,000 pieces
And
with
I had
not even sharp scissors.
I had a kid in kindergarten at the time, so it was frustrating to have to put it down, and go back to it and put it down, and go back to it. Started at one corner, and I made 2 giant triangles, not ever knowing until I finished if they were going to join together, but they did.
Wow.
So that was the first one.
So how much of your work is completely planned in advance? And I mean, do you sit down and you lay out everything in advance and say, this is how it's going to look? Or do you sometimes just kind of go through it and create it as you go along?
The more I quilt, the less I go by how I want it to look in the end. And when I first started, I would look at a picture in a book and I would copy it. The same colors, the same size, the same textures. And then as I got more courageous with my own ability to do those things, I would tweak the colors, or I would change a line, or I would add some black and white, or a new border, or a different size. And now some of the quilts I make, I don't like to measure, I don't like rulers, and I just freeform. And sometimes I'll lay, if I'm doing like an Amish design, I'll lay the fabrics out on the floor and see how the colors go together. And sometimes I'll leave them sit there for a few days and mix. The most common mistake is to not have a contrasting color, because under a bright light everything looks great, and then you get the quilt done and you realize that they're all the same tones, and you have to kind of put a zinger in there to make it pop, and that's taken a long time to learn.
Patti Z zinger.
That's right.
Well, your home is really interesting. There's all these planes everywhere. So there's two artists in the family, and you've collaborated in the past in a show with Alex's paper art, his planes, and you're going to do another one of those shows.
Right, October of 2010 at the Senior Center, part of the gallery walk.
Great.
And he always has live demonstrations of his models, so all of the photos I have of the gallery walk, everyone's looking up at the ceiling.
He keeps saying, my quilts are on the wall, stop looking at the ceiling.
But it's kind of festive. It's like a live demo, and then people wander around and look at the quilts, and it's a great combination of art.
So you work with fiber art, but then you've also taken the concept of quilting and applied it to the making of cards and other items. Do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I always made cards since I was a little kid, but I made a few for an art show that I was in and priced them at $3, and they just flew out the door, and I was just astounded that anyone would pay $3 for a card that I had made. And I use all paper punches, and a lot of them have quilt designs, like some of these. Lately I've been doing birds and flowers and trees, and I just love playing with color, and it's just a really small amount of time. It's a small investment in materials, and people love them. And they carry them at the co-op, both co-ops and Prairie Lights, and I sell them at shows. And it's just wonderful to have people, I work at the co-op, and people will come up to me and they'll say, oh, I got one of your cards and I just love it, and I framed it, or I sent your card to Germany and they asked me who made it, and some people say, oh, I sent your card to somebody and I told them I made it. So you get every kind of story. And it's the same thing with the quilts. Everything has a story. Either it comes to you as a story or it leaves as a story, and it just keeps going and going and going. It can just make your day to have somebody come up to you and say, I gave somebody one of your quilts and they just love it. And you must get tired of hearing this, but I just love the way you work with color. It's like, no, I don't get tired of hearing it. It's like fuel that keeps you going,
Yeah, it's probably why you've made so many pieces. How many pieces do you think you've made?
Thousands.
Thousands. Let's talk about a couple of your specific pieces, because you just said every quilt has a story.
Right.
And one of the pieces that you showed us today is a piece that your friend made that's an image of you quilting. You must have a lot of friends who are quilters.
I have some, not a lot, but some. It's kind of for me, it's kind of a solo activity. It's very contemplative, and I put on some music and just work, and then the fun of it is getting it all together, all 60 pieces or whatever. For my 60th birthday, I had 60 quilts in a show, and it's just to see them all. It's just so exciting. And you never quite know when you're making a piece where it's going to end up, but my color palette seems similar enough that I can have a show with 60 pieces and it looks intentional, And Alex does a super job of, I tell him where I want it, and he makes a design and measures the walls and makes little templates to scale of each piece, and it works, it's a good team.
So he's kind of your curator.
He calls himself the artist secretary, and he does all the cooking and cleaning and everything, and I do the work.
He's your support.
Art.
He's your one-man support team.
Totally.
That's great. Another couple pieces that you showed me today. There's some pieces that have stars in them, and you talked about making a piece while your mother was in the hospital and making these stars, and in the end kind of realizing, oh, this is all meant to go together and be a piece. So does that happen often, where you've got a quilt that's a piece of your life?
Oh yeah. I mean, the friendship quilt obviously is the stellar one in that category, but the piece that I have in the bedroom that has 4,000 pieces in it, I knew I wanted to make a piece with 100 stars, so I did the center, and then I got the idea of doing black and white border